I want to start by telling you a story about a woman called Rachel. Now, Rachel is a really hard worker. Day in, day out, she motivates herself to be the best she can be. She delivers. She fields hundreds of interruptions. She juggles loads of different projects. She holds up those around her, enabling them to achieve her potential. And she's empathetic. She takes the time to understand her team's behavior. She can even anticipate their needs. Rachel sounds great, doesn't she? To an employer, you'd think Rachel would be a really valuable asset. Yet Rachel was overlooked. Because what I've just described is Rachel caring for her young children. And to the world, she was just taking time out. So rather than advancing in her career off the back of this experience, Rachel fell into the statistic of one of the 65% of women who risk being professionally downgraded after taking time to provide care. Each week in the UK, people spend over 100 million hours developing skills whilst taking time out as caregivers. Skills the business world desperately needs. Empathy, stress tolerance, resilience. It might be a parent taking a couple of years to look after a small child, a daughter supporting her mother who's living with dementia, or someone taking time to care for a friend or neighbour living with complex disabilities. When we stop and think about it, caregiving is an incredible way to develop skills. And there's no objective reason that explains why it's been overlooked for so long. It's merely a relic of a bygone era where our value system was dictated by traditional male and female roles. We live in a different world these days, or at least we're trying to. And the pandemic, as awful as it was, as the most disruptive moment of our lives, when we saw the true challenge and value of caregiving, we have this opportunity to view things differently. When I became a mum 5 years ago, I found it to be the most rewarding yet stretching experience. I can tell you, in between the Play-Doh, the muddy football boots, the glitter that remains forever stuck to your forehead, is managing the disappointment that comes from not scoring that goal or winning that race. It's the resilience of facing yet another day with a crying, colicky baby on very little sleep. It's the decision-making, when to take them to A&E, when their temperature spikes, when they're 4 months old, or they've hit their head, or their cough turns to croup, and they're struggling to breathe. What I've learned being their mum is massive. Now, caregiving comes in many forms. Mums, dads, guardians, unpaid carers. Supporting my dad during his end-stage fight with blood cancer gave me the tiniest of insight into what it means to be a carer. Providing reassurance, love, support, trying to stay calm, evaluating treatment plans, researching, trying to amass any information that might help. All in the context of extreme emotional stress. It was my privilege to support my dad alongside my family. And whilst no one wants to learn in this way, they learn nonetheless. What I've learned, how I've developed through the intense, immersive experience of caregiving, can't be taught via PowerPoint slides in a conference room. caregiving takes you out of yourself. You no longer measure your success by what you yourself achieve, but instead the growth and enjoyment you bring out of other people. If that doesn't sound like real leadership, I don't know what does. Now, I promise you I'm not the only one who thinks that I've developed skills as a caregiver. I run a social enterprise supporting employers to value this kind of experience. And last year, we ran a survey for over 1,000 people. 2/3 said they developed skills whilst providing care to others. Over 70% of people developed empathy skills. 63% of people developed stress tolerance and communication. And over half of people developed time management skills. Other skills noted were listening, patience, diplomacy, coaching, de-escalation, compassion. What workplace wouldn't be better with more of these kind of competencies? You know what's crazy? 75% of people wouldn't put this on their CV. Why? Well, in our society, it's actually really hard to feel proud of being a caregiver. Unpaid caregiving is one of the most underrated roles there is. It's apologized for, it's excused away. It's the invisible job. Yet for a job that's invisible, it's done at great scale. The New York Times reported that American women's unpaid labor was worth more than the revenue of Apple, Amazon, and Walmart combined. Now, I'm not going to get into the argument of whether this care should be financially compensated or not. What I want to focus on today is the sheer scale of development that happens and how we can bring it into focus. Currently, caregiving leads to a financial penalty. And whilst it's important to acknowledge that men care too, they can be amazing, the majority of caregivers are women. So everything we're talking about here is a driver of the gender pay gap. 12 years after the birth of her first child, a woman's pay is 1/3 less than that of a man per hour worked. Over half of caregivers feel demoralized at work due to being overlooked for opportunities. And less than 1 in 5 women feel confident returning to work after maternity leave. The pandemic has turbocharged this. Here's just a selection of headlines from the last 18 months. Women's employment rates back to 1980s levels. Millions of women haven't rejoined the workforce and may not. In 1 year, women globally lost $800 billion in income due to COVID-19. The burden of care, be that childcare, elder care, care for anyone who needs it, sat behind these headlines. Now, it may be true more women did play this role in the pandemic, but it doesn't need to follow that their future careers should be impacted by it. That comes from our failure to respect caregiving in our society. There was a story just the other day of a woman who'd taken 5 years to care for her 3 young children, and she was looking to re-enter paid work. Despite meeting all the competencies on the job spec, when the recruiter heard about her time out, they cut the salary offered by 40 to 50%. She had the skills. She had the skills. I'm going to say it one more time. Caregivers have skills. Really, really valuable ones. Do you remember the top skill identified by caregivers? Empathy. Did you know that 80% of CEOs think empathy is key to business success? Empathy is fundamental in the workplace. It makes sense when you think about it. Have you ever sat in a meeting or a tutorial and not shared your idea or spoken up for fear of being wrong or making a mistake? Or ever quit your job because your boss was just a really unpleasant person to work with? Certain working cultures can make us feel at risk, or like we'll be blamed if something goes wrong. When we feel this way, we act differently. We hold back. We protect ourselves. We might not constructively challenge an approach, even if we disagree with it. We might not put our ideas on the table. When we work in this kind of environment, it's clear innovation is stifled. It's not good for employee well-being. It's not good for business profitability. I ask you, how many ideas and opportunities do you think are lost because of this? When leaders are empathetic and cultures champion kindness, people are more likely to be innovative, productive, and they're less likely to quit their jobs. When businesses fail, it's usually because leaders have stopped taking the time to understand their environment and instead stay insulated in their own operations. They need more caregivers who are trained in thinking beyond just themselves. Now, this is only going to get more important. As we fast forward 10, 20 years, the advancements in artificial intelligence are going to fundamentally change how and what we work on. We'll be outcompeted for a number of the physical and mental roles we do today. But you know one area where we can't be outcompeted on? Is our humanity. AI cannot show empathy. Increasingly, our focus will turn to how we can layer in emotional intelligence and understanding into this increasingly automated world that we live in. In this light, caregiving experience could actually future-proof your career rather than detract from it. So hopefully you're sitting there and thinking, okay, yeah, she's got a point. Why have we overlooked this experience for so long? And what can we do about it? Well, as individuals, employers, society at large, we all have a role to play. If you have an opportunity to care for someone, the greatest thing you can do is to empower yourself to view it as an enriching experience. As you care, take the time to mentally label some of the skills you're drawing on. Reflect on what you're achieving. Each and every day, tell yourself you're becoming more competent as a result of this experience. Talk about these skills with pride at your next job interview. Add them onto your CV. Walk into that office on the first day back after maternity leave and own your newfound abilities. You are not an imposter. As an employer, you have to ensure that your workplace values caregiving experience. You have to weed out any kind of bias that might be holding people back. Look at your recruitment process, for example. What algorithms might you be using which sift out caregivers' CVs because the computer doesn't understand the value of time out? Look at your human processes too, which might be doing the same. Once people are hired, Support them with flexible, exciting job opportunities that have a clear progression path. Give them a platform, boost their profile, and look for opportunities where they can put their experience into action. When we do all this, we'll help people achieve their potential. We'll unleash a vast resource of talent for employers, and we'll make a massive dent in the gender pay gap. But this isn't just a HR or an employment issue. The opportunity we have here is actually far greater than a company's performance or staff retention rates. When we have organizations that value caregiving experience, we have organizations that are increasingly filled with empathetic and caring people who can help that business look beyond merely its own immediate interests for new opportunities, to collaborate with other like-minded organizations. And when they do, unearth innovative new approaches to age-old problems. Look at the speed of scientific discovery and vaccine production when the pharmaceutical industry took an unprecedented collaborative approach to address COVID-19. Yes, these were exceptional circumstances. Yes, we were in a time of crisis. But I'm afraid crisis is going to be our new normal. With the intense environmental, societal, economic pressures we face in today's world, we have to look to caring approaches as an alternative way to address things like climate change, food scarcity, food waste, migration, population displacement. From such a small idea as valuing caregiving experience and caring approaches, an oak tree of collaboration and compassion could grow. Now, we have to challenge the notion that caregiving experience is not relevant, transferable, or valuable outside of our own homes. Caregiving experience should help people progress in their careers. It can boost business performance, and it can promote a more equal and responsible society. This isn't just time out. This isn't weakness. This is an opportunity. Thank you.